Hello and welcome back to the Connection Compass podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Louise Evans. Today, I wanted to share some thoughts about what it means to truly honour ourselves as human beings. In June, I am launching my first private podcast series, The Human Reset, a 10-episode container for you to listen to, reflect, take part in grounded practices for you to use in life, love, and work. To find out more, be notified as soon as it goes live. Please sign up to the link in the show notes. Today's episode is about the beginning of a movement that I am growing, advocating, and focusing on a human-first approach in all we do, where we remember that who we are matters just as much as what we do. In this episode, I talk about listening to the quieter inner voice, making space for growth and mistakes, learning to sit with discomfort, and finding peace in being more at home within ourselves. This is an episode about compassion for self and for others, possibility, and remembering that we only get one life to explore, experience, and enjoy. Hello everyone, it's Andrea here, and I'm here with another solo episode on the Connection Compass podcast. Next week, we will return to our guest slots, which I'm really excited about. As you know, every so often, I really love doing solo episodes, and it enables me to share some words and thoughts about my work and everything that I'm working on at the moment. As you may have heard in previous podcast episodes, I've been doing the 100-day public speaking challenge on TikTok, and today is day 79. Yesterday, I posted a short video on my plan, what is going to happen next with the work around connection. And one of the things that I am working towards is I'm going to start a human-led movement, so that everything that we do, every interaction, every work that we produce, policy, every time we deliver care or we spend time with our families, that at the heart of that is a human being and the human that exists on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual sphere. Because we are holistic beings, and often the spiritual aspect of ourselves, the energetic part, gets missed off. And I think that is why often we see so much anxiety and stress, and that people feel so overwhelmed, burdened, and every day we are taking on more than we can handle on a daily basis. And this can cause us to feel disconnected from ourselves and from each other. And also, if we're not connected to the holistic parts of ourselves, that we end up on the wrong path. We end up doing things because we think we should be doing them. We're not really doing what our heart wants us to do, and there's lots of conflict between head and heart. But by accepting where we are and acknowledging those four holistic parts of ourselves, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, that we have an opportunity to reclaim our human power, no matter how much technology is surrounding us and how great it may be. And that we have an opportunity in doing so to balance our life and start to really work with our hearts, our minds, our spirits, our energy, bringing them into balance. And that by giving ourselves time and space, that we are each able to listen to the deep inner wisdom that we hold and intuition, and that we're able to gain clarity and purpose and tap into our possibility and potential. Because when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling really burdened by life, it's very, very difficult to hear that gentle inner voice that sits inside of you, that has all the answers, that is going to support you to create a more balanced life, to enable you to make the right choices for you. Doesn't matter what anybody else is doing or what anybody else has, accessing that inner knowledge, that inner purpose, that inner potential is there. We just need to listen to that gentle inner voice that is often so drowned out by our own painful grief and conflict and negativity. By slowing down and listening in, that we start to access the peace of the mind and listen to the power of that inner voice, especially when life becomes overwhelming and difficult, and that we overcome these feelings of self-sabotage. Often in modern day life, the speed at which it moves, we don't really have time to think things through. Our thoughts, our feelings are often overridden by the loudness of the world around us, and we often find ourselves in very unhealthy situations that deplete our personal power, that are stealing our self-worth. But by going inwards and listening to ourselves, we can overcome those stubborn patterns, those thoughts and feelings that self-sabotage your progress, your possibility and potential, and your joy of life in all that you're doing and what you want to do. Going inwards can give us different perspectives. It can support us to feel strong mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Can support us to keep us centered and balanced while flowing with the rhythms of life and evolution. It brings us back to ourselves. It brings us home. And when we have listened to ourselves and get to know ourselves, it can leave us feeling peaceful. It can leave us feeling with a sense of freedom and safety and protection within. And once you've captured that, no one can ever take it away from you. You will stand rooted and grounded, just like we see in the trees that surround us. When I started the work on connection, it all came from a very brief moment in 2017. I never anticipated that this work would develop and grow in the way that it has. And it was just this briefest of moment of seeing that people needed more, that we weren't holding space enough for people to express themselves, be themselves, to allow themselves to be heard and understood. And to bring this work, I've had to do inner work as well. It's not always been easy. Sometimes I've had to sit in real discomfort and unhappiness. But by going inwards and listening and following the feelings and the emotions and my thoughts that haven't always been helpful, I've managed to overcome obstacles, my own self-sabotage, my own disconnection. And the inner work really led me to my why. So quite a few years ago now, I did a workshop, Simon Sinek's team, on finding your why. And my why is to trust in a connection with my true self so that others feel understood, heard, and loved unconditionally. Now, what that means to me is that I have engaged in the inner work. I've got to know myself. I've got to understand myself over the years, so much so that I can see myself in others. And that gives me a understanding of others. It allows me to give them space that they need to develop and grow. One of the values of the work of connection is that we allow people space. So we allow people space and time to grow, to just be, to get things wrong, to express what they're feeling without fear of being controlled and screamed at by others, to give them the space to learn, to listen to others and to understand. And I think that's one of the best gifts that we can give to people, is to give them the time and space to just be themselves, to grow, to learn, to make mistakes, to exercise their intuition, to exercise their inner wisdom and allow it to come forth and bring it out into the world. We will always get things wrong. It's just natural. It's part of human nature that we get things wrong. But by moving inwards and listening, we can have a grounded sense of self and feel an element of self-compassion, really, when we're growing and we are developing. I think sometimes doing the inner work can feel bittersweet, because even though we know we're growing, developing, we're moving forwards and we're exercising the ability to reach our possibility and potential, we can often find that we're leaving our parts of ourselves behind that are really comfortable, although not always helping us. So, for example, sometimes even though we know that our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs that we have about ourselves are limiting us, preventing us from reaching our possibility and potential, we can feel quite at home there. And as we start to move away from that, as we move out of that energy, we can feel a sense of fear. We can also feel a sense of loss, a sense of grief. But it's all part of our human evolution to leave that behind and move into the new, no matter how scary it is. I think the new is always frightening and exciting, exhilarating at the same time. And it's just, we can't let it get out of hands. We can't let that feeling of comfort prevent us from moving forwards. And we've just got to move through our destiny. And it's quite interesting because as I was preparing for the podcast today, I actually got my tarot cards out, and there was a card. It was the Six of Swords. Often it deals with, the swords deal with our mental thoughts, and there was a picture of the moon and an orca coming out of the water and moving across the moon. And I think it was a reminder to say, even though often we're caught up in our thoughts and things that are going on around us, this chaos, this conflict, but don't forget about the magic of life, and that it can be joyous, even though things are difficult around us. All we ever have is now, is the present moment. Life can be gone in the blink of an eye, or things can change dramatically in every given moment. Life can be incredibly beautiful, but it's also incredibly fragile as well. And so, not to forget that we have an incredible world full of magic and synchronicity and hope and faith and trust. We just have to find it and lean into it and learn to enjoy it. When I started this work on the connection, it came out the briefest of moments. It was just a flicker, really, and it was just seeing that we weren't giving human beings enough time and space to grow. And I wanted to do something about it. I really felt passionate about us as humans having better experiences. And, there's a fine line between being stuck in our mindsets and being open to that possibility and potential. We can get so bogged down in our thoughts and feelings, self-sabotage and negativity. And I think particularly if we are surrounded by that as well, we might not necessarily have those feelings of self-sabotage or negativity, but people around us maybe, and it can be so easy to get pulled down by that as well. And it's really important that we stand strong and that we stick to our own path. It doesn't matter what Jane or Mary or John is doing over the other side or what they have. This is your life. You only get one, and it's here for you to explore and enjoy. And, things might not always go your way, but doors will open, the right doors will open. The people that you meet along the way may not always stay with you forever, but perhaps they bring you wisdom or lessons. They teach you how not to be, or that you learn that they're just not for you. They're not your people, and that leads you to find new amazing groups. I know it's hard when we have to leave things behind, especially things that allow us to feel at home and comfort. Sometimes we are invited to move away from that. And this was something that I experienced when I was in my late 20s, and I was terribly disconnected to myself and doing everything that I should be doing and what the person was doing next to me. And I just felt completely lost. And I just wanted to really just settle down and be at home. But life was kicking me and saying, no, no, you're meant for something else. You've got more things to do. There's more to your life here. And it took me a while to understand that. And I think, particularly at the point where I went traveling, I'd given up my job, I'd sold my home, and I was excited and I wanted to go and explore. But there was a part of me that if somebody had said, look, you can go traveling or you can stay at home and you can get married and you can have a family, I would have chosen that path within a split second without even thinking about it. But that wasn't an option for me. And, I went traveling, and I'm so grateful that I did, because things really started to open up, and my debilitating panic attacks that I had lived with for 18 months just stopped, and everything slipped into place really, really easy. The moment I made the decision, the house was sold within a couple of days, and my car was sold, and all these things kind of slotted into place, making it easy. And even though leaving the comfort of home behind was difficult, I knew it was the right thing to do, that it was going to give me some space and time. And I had this amazing 9 months just traveling around world and meeting lots of different people, and my creativity that had been buried so deep in the earth started to resurface. And I was writing blogs. Do you remember the old blog spot? Does that still exist? I had a blog on there. My brother set it up for me, and it's still there today. Obviously it is still there because it's still there today. I can still access it, but wrote about my travels and working in Zambia and Zimbabwe and traveling and just different airports and the people that I spoke to and met, and just the laughter, being in some real out village in Zambia and just finding human laughter and joy. No, our lives couldn't have been further apart. And that wasn't the first time that I had worked and traveled in Africa. I'd also done some work a few years before in northern Uganda, but that was the same, and wherever I've been in the world, I've always found connection and people to talk to, and we all have things in common. It doesn't matter how far and how different our lives are. And I've always been incredibly grateful for that. And perhaps one of the reasons why I find the current times so difficult to comprehend. And I just wonder how insular perhaps we've become as a nation, as a society, as a world. Are we too focused on what's on our phones and what's on social media? Are we too distracted by things that are going on around us? And actually, if we just turned inwards and we just opened out to a different way of being, a different world, actually we would see it. And so the plan for this work is that I am going to start a human-led movement. And we're going to start off really small. It's going to start with a 10 episode private podcast called The Human Reset. And it will take us on a journey. So I've often thought to myself, if we had the opportunity to press a reset button on ourselves, how would we then grow from that place? And so this private podcast series is going to be about that. The podcast will be available from the beginning of June and will be $9.99 UK pounds, and it will come with resources, grounded practices, some thoughts for the week, and obviously you will have lifetime access. So that is the starting point of the movement, and we'll see how momentum grows. If you'd like to join me, if you'd like early notification or a little bit more information about the podcast, there's a link in the show notes that you can sign up to, and I will let you know when the podcast is live and you can access it. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Connection Compass podcast. Remember, if you want to hear more information and be notified as soon as the private podcast goes live, The Human Reset, please check the show notes for details. If you think this episode will help somebody else, please leave a review, and remember to keep talking, keep connecting for a more interconnected world.